This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.
Hey, Bob, how you staying warm today? You just kind of locking yourself indoors? That's what I plan on doing for most of the day.
Yeah, I was going to go out and do a couple things, but I'm going to put those off because it's pretty nasty outside. Don't want to get in a wreck or, pretty cold, too. It's pretty nice in the house. I'd say it's a good day to be indoors and just stay warm, stay safe.
Well, good. I hope you're able to do that. What should I take away from Arkansas beating UNC Asheville yesterday, 85-51? Because the thing that I take from it, I never got my eyes on the game. I was traveling with the women's basketball team, but when I heard and read the statement about Nick Smith, that's kind of my takeaway from the game, is that we don't know we're going to see him again. As otherwise, I'm not sure what else to take from Arkansas blowing out a team that, quite frankly, they probably should have blown out.
Yeah, I think, that was the first game. They obviously had played the first six without Nick Smith, and then he was back when Trevor Brazil got hurt, and he's unfortunately out for the year. But this was the first game they didn't have either of those guys, who were two of their top players, really two of the top players in the SEC. Excuse me. And so I thought they did a good job, quote, taking care of business. I mean, UNC Asheville, obviously not, they're from the Big South Conference, I think it is, and they're not a SEC caliber team, but still Arkansas, took care of business, jumped out on them, I think 28-9, and really game was never in doubt. So I think the fact they could play that well without two key guys, and they're obviously not going to get Trevor back. We don't know if and when they're going to get Nick back, but I think they still have three really great players. I don't think there are a lot of teams that have three players with, doing better than Ricky Council and Anthony Black. And, Jordan Walsh has come on. He only had 4 points last night. Only did 2 shots, but he played really good defense. He was one of the guys that helped shut down Drew Pember, who was averaging almost 20 points for, 6'10" kid that can shoot, is averaging like 19.7 points. He scored 40 against Central Florida. A former Tennessee player who wasn't playing for the Vols, transferred and was doing really well at UNC Asheville. And so they turned him over again, just like they did Bradley. I think they were 32-5 on points off turnovers, and in the previous game they were 37-9. So I think that's 69-14. I think of points off turnovers. I mean, I don't care if you're playing a high school team; that's pretty impressive. So, but yeah, obviously the big news is Nick Smith not playing, and really the statement that he's out indefinitely for right knee management. That's basically the exact same thing they said the night of the opener on November 7th, so well over a month ago, nearly 2 months ago, when they opened the season against North Dakota State. So, the good news is they didn't say he's done for the year. They're shutting him down, and Nick was at the game, sat on the bench. He watched the guys shoot around for the game. So I don't think he's done for the year, or else they would just, schedule procedure or whatever he might need and get it done. But you do wonder, when can he play again? Is this just going to be and when he does come back, assuming he does come back, is this just going to keep happening? Because he missed the 6 games and he comes back and plays pretty well, then he has to take himself out of the end of the OU game, and then really missed the whole second, virtually last 17 minutes of the game against Bradley. So is this going to just keep happening where you take one step forward and a step back or whatever, and how's that going to impact the team? But I thought the fact they played so well last night against, obviously a team like you said they should dominate, I took that as a good sign.
Bob, yeah, it's going to be, I think it'll be an ongoing thing with Nick Smith, and you want to make sure he's healthy. If he gets hurt anywhere else but that knee, then it's a basketball thing, but you don't want him to injure that knee. I mean, you don't want the kid to get hurt, but yeah, it's going to be a thing all year, I think. And when you watch the game, who did anybody else outside of Anthony Black, Jordan Walsh, Ricky Council, Devo Davis impress you, and do you think any of those guys are getting any more time going forward in the conference play?
Yeah, well, yeah, the big guy, Arkansas scored 41 points off the bench, which usually doesn't happen because Eric usually has a pretty short rotation. But Jalen Graham, who's kind of been hit and miss this year, there's been games where he's gotten limited minutes and played pretty well, like scored 12 points, whatever, in 11 minutes, or sometimes he hadn't played at all. And he came off the bench and scored 16 points. And his career high was 19 at Arizona State. I mean, he was a second-team All-Pac-12 player, so he's, a pretty solid player. And he's kind of had to get adjusted to how they do things here. I think probably the intensity and the way they practice is probably a little different than maybe what he was used to. But he's a guy that when Trevin Brazil went down, he was a guy you instantly thought, well, here's a guy that could help him out more. He's a senior. He's got good size. He's 6'9". He's pretty good offensive player. The guys call him spin cycle. At least that's what Kamani Johnson told us a while back. He's got these pretty good spin moves, and Eric talked about that last night. Eric Musselman did. So that was a guy that came off the bench and probably earned himself some more playing time. They need him to rebound more, but he's been taking some charges. Not Jalen Williams, to that degree, but I think he's taken 3 or 4 charges this year, so that's encouraging. And then Joseph Pinion, who's one of their best outside shooters, and without Nick Smith and Trevor Brazil were 2 of their best 3-point shooters. So if they don't have those guys, their 3-point shooting can be pretty limited. And Joseph Pinion's a pretty good shooter. He came in and scored 10 points. He hit a couple 3-pointers from the corner. He also had 2 dunks. So he showed some athleticism. So those 2 guys, off the bench were pretty impressive. And look like, well, maybe they can help them. I mean, one thing about this team, Eric said, and I said this before they started having all these injuries, but he said this is probably the deepest team he's had at Arkansas, but probably Nevada for that matter. And so that depth is being tested with Trevor being out for the year, Nick being out for indefinitely. I guess that's the way to put it. That's how they put it. And so I do think they have some different parts, whether it's Jalen Graham, Joseph Pinion, Darian Ford came in and played some. I still think, Barry Dunning's a guy that could help him out. Mikal Mitchell, who's Makai Mitchell's twin brother, got a few minutes. So they have a lot of different, parts that, it depends on if they need size, if they maybe need some defense. Kamani Johnson played really well. 7 boards, 7 rebounds, 3 steals. I think he had 4 offensive boards. Such a good offensive rebounder. Kamani's, of course, the guy's helped about 4. He saved their bacon against San Diego State. So they do have some options and some some good players coming off the bench as well.
Well, I mean, the real tests start in a week. You get
on the road. Yeah,
you get a hot LSU team that's winning games by some pretty tight margins of late. I mean, they beat Eastern Tennessee by 4, beat Winthrop by 8, 10 over North Carolina Central, Wake by 2, beat UT Arlington by 4, beat Wofford by 3. I mean, the record is the record, and you can't take that away from LSU. They're the same as Arkansas at 11-1, but they're also not ranked at 11-1. And, you get them a couple of times. And how about the SEC 2 days ago? What was their record? 1-4? There were 4 losses for SEC teams in 5 basketball games, and not against the best teams in the country. I know the SEC yesterday went undefeated, but what do you think about the conference right now, just before the start of conference play? It feels like the league might be a little bit top heavy, and right now I'm not sure if Kentucky belongs in the top of the top heaviness.
Yeah, it's funny. I just looked up those scores. A not so super Tuesday for the SEC. Wofford won at Texas A&M. North Alabama won at Ole Miss, and Drake beat Mississippi State, who's ranked, in a neutral site game in Lincoln, Nebraska. I guess they had a tournament in Lincoln or something. I don't know why I'd want to go to Lincoln in the winter, but and then Lipscomb beat Louisville. I know it's not an SEC game, and we know Louisville's having a terrible year, but that was a bit of a surprise. And Iowa got shocked by who beat.
It was Eastern
Iowa
Illinois,
was like
30-point favorite.
Yeah,
Iowa was a 30-point favorite, Bob.
Yeah, Eastern Illinois. I was going to say Eastern Kentucky, but yeah, and Fran McCaffrey. I mean, he's a pretty crazy guy anyway. I think he brought Greensboro in here a few years ago. Speaking of playing Greensboro earlier this year, and he's a good coach. But yeah, so but it's funny. The players we talked to Jalen and Joseph last night, and they talked about they got asked about the upsets, of the day before, and they talked about Eric Musselman, the coaching staff, showing them those game films, not just talking to them about them, but showing them the film and basically reiterating that, hey, this can happen. And that's one thing about Arkansas. They lost to Creighton, in a real tough game in Hawaii, and I know Creighton struggled, but they've also had some injuries. I still think Creighton's a pretty good team when they get healthy. But Yeah, Arkansas is one of these teams, and we see it every night in college basketball. Usually there's 2 or 3 games that you kind of look and say, wow, that happened? Really? That team beat that team at their place? And so they really reiterated to them. And it was the last game before Christmas holidays. You got 6 freshmen who hadn't been home, and you got even older players. These guys aren't 30 years old, I mean, Jalen Graham's from Arizona, and he's been here since the summer, I assume, and hadn't been back. And so a lot of times that can be a tough game when guys are looking forward to getting to go home for a few days. I think they were off obviously starting after the game, and they got to be back Christmas night to practice. So they get basically, parts of 4 days off, which is about as good as you can get in college basketball, at this time of the year when you have all these games. Some guys don't get to go home at all, probably. And I thought that with a lot of things going on, they stayed focused, took care of business, made sure they weren't one of those head-scratching losses. Tuesday was a bad day for the SEC. There's no 2 ways about that. But Arkansas made sure, they were part of that. And I agree with you. I think it is top-heavy. There's some great teams, Arkansas, Alabama, Tennessee. Kentucky's obviously really talented, has a great player of the year in Oscar Sheway, but Kentucky's not been very impressive. They got some things to figure out, but I think they will because John Calipari's a really good coach, and I know he's probably not real popular with Arkansas fans, but you can't question his resume, I don't think. And he's got good players. But yeah, Kentucky's been a disappointment. There's no 2 ways about that.
Man, I wonder about Calipari's popularity right now amongst Kentucky fans.
You've seen him do this before a few years back, where they kind of struggled, and then he got it. He kind of figured it out later. I haven't really watched them play much, and so it is kind of surprising. Bob, I want to ask you while we got you on. What do you? So I think they're going to be able to get a double bye this year. I got them at 13-5 in their 18 games. I was going to see what do you have their record going into conference play?
Oh, you mean when conference play is over?
I think they'll be a top 4 seed and get a double bye. I got them at 13-5.
Yeah, I think they're definitely one of the top 4 teams in the conference. I guess I hadn't looked at it game by game, but that sounds. That sounds right to me. 13-5, 14-4, it's 12-6, somewhere in there. A lot of it depends on if Nick Smith gets back and what he's able to do for them, and if they can avoid other injuries. I think right now, as good as Nick Smith is, and as good as Trevor Brazile was playing, I still think they're a really dangerous team and a really, really good team. And some of these young guys are just going to get more opportunities, or guys that weren't getting to play much, like Jalen Graham and some of the other guys we talked about. But, yeah, I think they're going to be an upper echelon SEC team without a doubt. But, man, the top of the SEC is really good. I mean, you look at Alabama knocking off 2 number ones. Of course, they lost to Gonzaga, who beat Kentucky. And, these teams are all kind of beating each other in the top teams. There's so many good games every weekend, it seems like. Like North Carolina, who's struggled after being number 1. They beat Michigan last night. They'll probably get ranked again. They're still really good. But, yeah, I think Arkansas, I definitely think they're one of the top 4 teams and should get a double bye.
Bob, you know that these movies are going to come on sometime this weekend. In fact, one station is going to play it all day long. If you had the choice between It's a Wonderful Life or A Christmas Story, and you had to watch one of them and you couldn't watch the other, what are you picking?
Oh, for me, that's easy. It's a Wonderful Life. I can't remember when I first saw that, but that's a great movie. I love Jimmy Stewart. Yeah, I kind of love old movies anyway. Of course, Christmas Story is an old movie, too, but I think it was made, maybe in the 70s or something like that. I'm not sure when it was made. But, yeah, I love It's a Wonderful Life. And I remember some station bought the rights to it, but it used to be everybody could show it. And so around Christmas, you'd just flip around. It was on everything. And then I can't remember who got it exclusively, and maybe they still have it, or maybe they can show it around. But, yeah, I think it's it's a wonderful movie. I mean, it's got a great message, I think, and great acting, and it's very uplifting at the holidays.
Well, the last thing then, would fruitcake be palatable by dipping it in eggnog, or is it better to use burn your fire in the fireplace?
I've had that maybe some bourbon or something. So
there we go, Bob.
I'm not a big alcohol drinker, but
that's the only way to drink eggnog.
Yeah, I don't drink. I don't like eggnog. So
like I said, you got to have some bourbon in it.
Yeah, something. But yeah, it depends on, homemade. I've had homemade fruitcake where, like I say, it's got, bourbon or maybe it's rum or something. So something to kind of soak it up, and it's pretty tasty.
Bob, appreciate you. I hope you have a very Merry Christmas, and we'll look forward to revisiting with you the day after the Liberty Bowl next week.
Football is back, and BetOnline remains your number one source for all your football betting needs this season. You'll find the latest odds, matchup info, player news, and game trends. And as your continued source for all sports wagering info, BetOnline features live betting, free contests, live scores, and giveaways all season long. Always the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports and events like MLB, MMA, tennis, boxing, and even golf. Head to betonline.ag to join and receive your 100% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use the promo code BELIEVE to receive your rewards. That's BLEAV. Bet online, where the game starts.